Beruchim Abayim, and welcome to Torah Talks, Chazaq's program with special guests. We have with us Rabbi Avraham Pam ZT, Baruch Haba, Shalom Aleichem, Rav. And we have our dear friend Rabbi Yossi Hoch, all the way from Queens. And we have Baruch Hashem, the Rabbi from Brooklyn. Life and legacy of Rabbi Avraham Pam, Rosh Yeshiva Torah Vadas. And it's a big honor for the both of you to join us. Thank you very, very much.
It's an honor to be here.
Baruch Hashem. So Rabbi Aaron, memories that stick out of your father, Zatzal.
All I know that he always wanted to learn and teach. He was a masmid. We used to go to sleep at night. He was sitting and learning.
Always learning.
In the summertime, he didn't teach in the summer. At one time there wasn't a thing called air conditioning.
There wasn't? Wow, I can imagine.
Even I can remember that.
Oh, okay.
And most of the times we were home, he would sit in the house and learn for hours and end. But otherwise he was a very normal father, which I can't expect that.
So Rabbi Yossi, your relationship with Rabbi
I was a Talmud. I was a Talmud in Torah Talks when I was a base medrash. He went up and down, usually in the yeshiva. He didn't, there was certain Rebbein gave the same shiur, always the same level. He sometimes stayed with a class for 2-3 years. And there were Bachrim who stayed in his class for more than 2-3 years. Some came in, some went out, and that's how I first developed. Though I had met him before because there was always a car going back to Canarsie. In those days, the yeshiva was in Flatbush, and Rav Pam lived on Remsen Avenue, which was part of Canarsie, and I didn't live far away. I lived it's like from one end of Cugon Hills to the other end of Cugon Hills. It wasn't right nearby, but it was close enough that there was one car. And so I sometimes was in that car, and he would schmooze afterwards. It was after his Friday schmooze, and that's how I really got to know him. I think once I had a shaila when I was in university, and I went to the mashgiach Rav Wilson to discuss it, and he said, "This I think you're best to ask Rav Pam." It was like a chiddush to me. I didn't at those days like Rabbi Aaron said, Rav Pam was a Rebbe. You have a shayla halacha, you should go to Rav Pam. I didn't, but that's, it was later on when I think we knew how, it wasn't just a halacha problem, it was halacha and hashkafa together. And Rav Pam just, he knew how to answer it. And he answered it with a calm and with a smile. I mean, people didn't, I think, didn't really a sense of humor. He laughed very easily. He made you really feel, at home. It was just his way.
Well, we didn't realize till we were older that he was a Talmud Chacham, all four Chalkei Shulchan Aruch. We didn't know, we grew up, we realized that we didn't know it.
Unbelievable. And with the later years, your relationship got stronger with your involvement.
Yeah, I wasn't, during his lifetime, I wasn't directly involved in Shuvu. I attended a lot of the meetings and a lot of because I was busy with our community here in Queens.
Yes.
Baruch Hashem. And I, in fact, once I take him home, I was updating him on what we do here in the community, and at that time we also had a serious shaila. That's chinuch, and Reb Zelig was our paisek. But I mentioned to him the shaila we had, so he said, "Why didn't you come to discuss it with me?" So I said to him, it was very funny. I remember I said to him, "Rebbe, the whole world is bothering you. I have rachmanis on you." And he laughed. Of course, that was his. He laughed very. That doesn't come through with Talmud. He laughed very, very easily, and he laughed. But when I dropped him off, there was a line of waiting outside his house. A line of people waiting outside his house. So I said, "Rebbe, I wasn't that inaccurate." So.
Wow,
but when I said to him that we dealing with Rav Zelig, so he was, oh yes, he's
you're in good
spoke very spoke very, very highly of him. They were very close.
Yair Kamenetsky had a problem. He took over with Rav Zelig.
Really?
Right. I heard this. It's amazing.
Amazing. So over the last number of years over here at Chazaq, we've been working nonstop to guide, inspire, and change the lives of thousands of Jewish kids in public schools who are primarily from the former USSR, the Soviet Union. But Shuva has been doing that for decades. Maybe you could update us how it all started, and of course, Rabbi Avraham Pam's involvement, your father.
It always bothered him that we did not have enough chinuch for children in America, and it was over. But what can you do about it? You have to, but when they started coming from Russia to Eretz Yisrael, he felt it's a very, very big problem because they'll become anti-Haredi, they'll become the Zionists, and more than that, he said, we used to daven, he used to speak about in yeshiva when he spoke in Yom Kippur to the Olam that they have to daven for our brothers in Russia, and now they're coming out. If not coming out, we have a chance to do something. So let's do something for it. And he always felt that you have to start with education, with teaching children. That's all. You can't a karev and this and make parties, but the main thing is
the children.
No. Main thing is to teach them Torah, teach them Allah chinuch.
Teach them.
Yeah, I think you know with how this community developed here also in Queens, if you teach the children, the parents especially for the ones who was coming from southern Russia and
they're not anti.
They're not anti. They
better.
don't know. They're Amiratzim,
exactly.
and it's sometimes very, they when they were in Russia, there was a J on their passport.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt that sometimes just to declare that you were Jewish was a tremendous serious nefesh in a statement. And they had that, but they didn't know what it was. So we had a Ma'asim Shuvu, a parent who never heard that there was a Seder on Pesach.
Wow.
He heard already Pesach. He didn't know Seder. Where should he know from? And he was a Leningrad. He was born in Leningrad. And he sent his kid to Tshuva because of the secular education that they have there. And the teacher invited him for a Seder. And he said, oh, this is very nice. And his son at that time was already making advances. Some Baruch Hashem is already in his young 20s. And he's finished Shas. And he said the whole family is religious, and including his parents. But many of them are not anti. You hear stories.
That's how my family actually became religious.
Yeah.
My parents were traditional, but Baruch Hashem, my older brothers went to yeshiva and they brought Torah home. Abba Shabbat, Ima Tzniut Kashrut, and that's the way.
They weren't that. On the contrary,
It is hard out. Most of us think about it, and
he did something.
No, not that. It bothers. We do it because you have to do it if you can't, But it ate his heart out. I should tell the story.
Yeah.
My father had a niece that was not from. Her parents were not from, and they were both nifta very young.
Oh, wow.
And she was 17 when her father passed away. She and her sister. There was not a father, not a mother, and they lived by a grandmother who was not from. Anyway. They lived far away out of town, but she started coming around. We had not much mashpach. She came around a little bit, not much, a little bit. Then she went off to Eretz Yisrael, and she met a kibbutznik from Eretz Yisrael, and she wanted to marry him. So she came to America. So where should she go? So she brought him to her uncle. To her, she called up. She wants to come and bring her chassan. They came, I don't know, I was not home, but they came, my parents were home, they came, they spoke a little bit and they went out. My father started to cry. Now, he was not an emotional person. He was very, mamish to cry. My mother said to him, what happened, what's the matter? He said, what do you mean? A boy born in Eretz Yisrael doesn't know about Pesach. Do we cry about it?
That's amazing.
This is a follow-up. You're going to talk about Shuv later. Maybe this is a good time. A follow-up to this story is when he was Nasi of Chil Chasmai. We'll talk about it a little before how he became it a little later. But when Soviet Jews were coming in such large numbers to Eretz Yisrael, so at that time the head of Chil Chasmai was Rav Leizerson. And very, very wonderful person. Sense of humor also.
Nephew from Rav Zalman Norbach.
Right, a nephew of Rav Zalman Norbach, very close to Rav Zalman. Rav Zalman raised him.
Oh.
Actually, his father died young, and he he came to, his job was, when he came, he would come for the Aguda convention, and he would first come to, at that time, Rav Pam was on the Message Gedolei Torah. So he came to visit Rav Pam before he came. And as he came to visit, he started to tell him what's going on in Eretz Yisrael and all the plans. And he says, Chinuch Chatzmoi can't take these children. And what's going to happen with them? They're going to go into the public schools. What's going to happen with them? And Rav Pam started crying. And at that time, he had his drasha all prepared. There was a scandal, some business scandal in the community. He wanted to talk about Yashrus and business, which was one of his. He had a number of main things that he used to talk to his Talmidim about. One was Yashrus and business, and to be straight in business. And he had a whole speech prepared for this. And he decided he's changing his speech. He said, it was the Thursday before the convention. It's not so posh. But when he told him the story, he started to cry. Rav Pam, like Rabbi said, he wasn't an emotional person. He started to cry. And the Rebbe came in the middle. I heard the story from Rabbi Blazen. He said, she got upset with me. What did you do to him? Why is he crying? So he said, no, I have to cry. He felt this was something to cry about. I mean, Rabbi said, who cries about this? We should cry every day because there are thousands and thousands of people, as children, who are not getting the proper education. But he felt it. And he felt he has
and
to
that
do something about
drasha is
it.
what got everything.
That drasha got him and
speech.
got everything going.
I heard from somebody else interesting thing. I was not there when the convention. He spoke, I think, by Shal Shudas or by Matzah Shabbos.
I think he spoke Shabbos, and then they had another meeting after that.
Yeah. But it was also not like out of character. He went around to a lot of the speakers beforehand that they should also speak about the Russians. Mm-hmm. So by the time he spoke, the oil was cooked on this.
I didn't know this.
So I was not there, somebody told me this.
I know, he just like this. He was walking in the lobby the next day, and my co-chairman in Shuvu was in the lobby. And he was a young kid at the time. He was in his late Biederman. He was. I don't even think he was working for. He wasn't as well known at the time, and maybe just
he working for the city.
He was working for the
control
city,
of New York City.
Yeah.
He
was a finance. He was finance
I didn't know that.
Commissioner, and he was housing commissioner under Catch. He was very close to Catch. But I think this was before he was the commissioner. So he said, Rabbi, should I come? He didn't feel he wasn't wealthy. He works for the city. He wasn't a wealthy person, but he wants to do something. So he said, sure, if you want to do, you come. If you want, you come. That was his, not how much you can give, what you want to do, come and be involved. And he's got the involvement to this day. I mean, that's how he was.
Unbelievable.
It's hard to.
From small beginnings back then and today, I had this chus merit, the honor to be on a shuvu mission.
Yes.
And I saw it with my own eyes. The rabbi was there as well. And you told me, come, you're doing this stuff over here in Queens, see what's going on there and how they do it. And I saw it, mamash, literally, ein doime shmilir. You can't compare hearing and seeing.
It's a little
17
different.
Elementary schools, I think?
We're in 19 cities, 19 elementary schools, 7 high schools, and over 20 kindergartens.
But what a revolution in Eretz Yisrael. And I saw the students, and I saw the parents, and I spoke to them, and they were so happy and excited about the Shuvah schools. And it's all planting a seed.
It is still growing.
And it's still growing. And there's a whole thing with French Jewry just recently.
When the French,
now there's a whole thing with Ukraine.
In Netanya, we have about 50 French students in Netanya. We took in 300 Ukrainian children last year.
Unbelievable.
And nobody else was really equipped to take in. There was everybody gets excited at the beginning.
And then later.
and then later we're left holding but we, Baruch Hashem, are still very, very strong. 300 children, and it's a big burden for us because they came out with nothing. I spoke to a lot of the refugees, a lot of the children. I spoke to a few of the parents. They mamish took a suitcase and ran. And one woman was telling me how she was in a car for 2-3 days just because of the traffic to get out in those first few days. And all they had was a suitcase. Just now, I got a message from our Samankal, that's the assistant director, David Ivgi. He somehow arranged through one of the organizations, he got 200 pair of shoes for children.
Wow.
They don't have anything.
They ran away.
And some clothes, and then they had a chidon halacha, the boys, and after that as a celebration. The next day they went out. They had a sports competition too. You give them both. So he got them T-shirts, also free T-shirts. They don't have anything. Some of these.
Literally, Hatzalat Nefesh, saving lives.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of Rabbi Avraham Pam ZT, I think of Ahavas Yisrael. Is there a reason why that is? Why it comes to mind Rabbi Pam equals Ahavas Yisrael? Like, is it because I think that I might have a book about it?
He spoke about it in the Friday shiur.
Yeah, one of the as a Talmud, he said if you have to miss a day, miss a Gemara shiur. Don't miss the Friday shiur. He gave the shmuz and he gave on the parsha, and he repeated it. He repeated a lot.
Some things he
repeated here. It's very funny. I once took him for a ride. It's an interesting story, actually. I've told it many times. It was right when the Vietnam War ended. On that day, I was taking him home, and I said, "Rabbi, I heard that Kissinger was going to have a press conference. Could I put the radio on? I usually schmoozed. I put the radio on." I said, "Sure." And they had the announcement that they finally signed a peace agreement and that the war is over. And then after that, the commentators all spoke about what could happen now. This could happen. That will happen. This. And that year, he said Chanukah didn't fall out on Parshas Miketz. And he always would say the same word. He would say the Beis Halevi on Parshas Miketz about what's the Siba, what's the what's the cause and what's the effect. So he says they're talking about now this could happen, that could happen. You never know if what the cause is and what the effect. The Rebbe Shalom wants something to happen, so he has something else happen before because the tachlis comes later on. We don't know what the tachlis is, but he would say that word every year on Parshas Miketz because he felt that was a very, very important lesson in Hashkafa, and he would repeat it. And I had the experience when he was already much older, so older Talmidim would come to the Friday shmuz. And so I wrote here, said, you're a Talmud. You should take all Fridays and go. So I went. I don't think it was the last one, but I remember I came again partially Kate, and he said the same word. It was like, because he felt that this was an important lesson to give over. And he was making, there was a story about how, I think I heard this from Rav Rice, and someone asked him what he should, how he could sometimes teach the same Masechta over and over again. And his response was, "You're not learning the Gemara, you're teaching students. It's how you, the Gemara is just a way of looking at it and teaching the students. So you don't have to get a satisfaction out of learning the Gemara. You get satisfaction out of the students knowing how the Gemara is being learned. That's." So it's he was a prime teacher, and that's the Yiddish just say gewollt wegstellen Talmidim. He wanted to set them straight how they go, put them on.
Amazing. It's well known that the Rav of Pam was the Rosh Yeshiva Torah Talks. He was teaching and learning in Gedolim, particularly with Rabbi Yaakov Kamnetsky, pushed the Rav to go, go work on behalf of the Klal Yisrael. Can you please elaborate about the Rav's Mesiras Nefesh, going above and beyond on behalf of the Jewish people?
Mesiras Nefesh was that he had to close the Gemara to do it.
Yes,
that's it. Yeah, we don't realize how a Talmid Chacham, how much taking away time from his Talmidim and from his Gemara is Mesiras Nefesh.
I remember hearing also by I believe it was a shuvu function or something towards the end of the Rav's life. The Mesiras Nefesh the Rav had to get there. Were you there? Do you remember?
I remember. He was standing next to the Rav. He was there. I was there. He was there, and you tried to convince him not to come at the time.
No,
right?
my mother wanted.
Your mother?
I didn't.
What was it
exactly?
You
didn't get it, but
it was a dinner. What was it?
No,
a parlor meeting in Flatbush.
Our summer parlor meeting was a very, very, very big event. And it was a very important event.
He was very sick, and he was lifted a few weeks later. He insisted on coming. He wasn't physically able. They brought him with an ambulance.
Unbelievable.
He could hardly talk. Even he didn't say a drush. Even he could hardly talk. The fact that he came, but Mesiras Nefesh was before that. All the time and the effort that he put into building this thing, into doing it, into making it.
At that time, Rabbi Solomon came. And Rabbi Yossi got very, very upset. We have it on video. The next day he spoke about it. He said, I was boiling. How could they do this to Rosh Yeshiva? But then he heard later, the Rosh, he didn't take no for an answer. He wanted to go.
Wow.
I mentioned to you the next day, the director of Shul for Eretz Yisrael, Rav Gutterman, came to say goodbye to him, and he expected to see him that he was wiped out from the evening and how, but he saw him sitting up very happy in bed, and you know, like he accomplished what he really wanted to set out to accomplish.
But the year before, 2 years before, he spoke by that Parliament meeting.
It was there in Lawrence also. He came out when it was a very bad condition.
No, but that was by
Gedalia.
yeah. That he got a letter that the parents in the north
that's Ertelin. It's not Nofa Galil.
That there's no Yiddishkeit or anything, and they want. I was there once. There is no thing. It's the birthplace of Christianity, and they do that. And they want the school. A
school.
School, a Shemaiah school. And the Mankal wrote that we don't see what we could do with, so we have no money with this. My father felt terrible about it. We have it on tape.
He banged on the table. Those bags are still going into me. How could we say no?
How could we say no? We can't say no. It's probably we said Allah Simchas will be soured. He said. If we know that our children have a bar mitzvah and they can't have a bar mitzvah because we said no. And anyway, he's banged on the table. People right away. I remember someone gave $25,000 just for this project. I mean, it was.
We have.
One second. So my son was sitting next to him. He was in the front. I was in the back. He was speaking. Yeah. So afterwards he sat down. So I told to my son something. Afterwards he sat down. He said, "He didn't sit down. He fell down. I had to catch him."
Wow.
He collapsed. And he said afterwards that he used to put aside time every summer for learning certain things that he couldn't get to a whole year. He says, I gave him a whole summer. He said he's not able to. He was so weak from it.
We were mentioning about the board member.
But I was in that school. The school still exists till today.
I
was there a few months. And it's Baruch Hashem. There's a school there. There's hundreds of children.
Now that there's a Haredi community in the area, but about 10 years ago, I think I was there, and the Rav Ha'izur, the whole area came to see us when we came to visit, and he told me this is the only place all around. He says there are 20,000 Yidden living here, Jews, 20,000 Jews. This is the only place where Torah is being learned.
Wow.
So, and it's a light. I mean, it's a light on the city.
Yeah, and I was there. I used to teach. Most of them lived in Haifa, which is over an hour's drive to this place. Right. So I said to him, and that's not good. It's good if teachers are there at the school so the children can come for a Shabbos. So I said to him, why master travel when no one lives here? So I said to me, who could live here? There's no Yiddishkeit. There's no shul. There's no nothing. Where can we live here?
Now there's a small Haredi community. There's a very, very good mayor there now who wants to get different Jews because it's a very Arab area. He wants to build it up with Jews. And he's very open. It is now, it's a little different, but it's still the only place like this in the area. And it was also one of the centers of when Ukrainians came into Eretz Yisrael a year ago. Mm-hmm. A lot of the refugees were sent there because there were hotels in the area for all the Christian pilgrims. So they had a lot of hotels there. So they had where to put up the refugees. And we were able to get, I think, 30 or 40 children came to the school from Ukrainian refugees.
Unbelievable, amazing. Wow. So the Rav Pam was involved, like we mentioned, with many organizations, Chinuch Hatzmai, Shuvu, of course. He was a Rosh Yeshiva Torah Talks, Nechamas Yisrael. The similarities that it's all chinuch. Can you please elaborate on the Rav Pam and his about the importance of Jewish education? Was that like his?
You see, he got involved in all these. He's all Jewish education. That's what he was interested in. I once asked him by a different, maybe a time, some other place we had to speak. There was a theme. I said, speaking about the theme, he says, I don't know what to say. I'm speaking back in.
that was
That's what he told me.
I think almost, except for once or twice when he talked about Yashua's honesty in business,
That's what, yeah.
he always talked about, even before Shuvu, he talked about Chinuch in Eretz Yisrael, especially, because he felt Eretz Yisrael nowadays is the set, he used to refer to it as Pal Shel Melech, the palace of the king. Eretz Yisrael is the palace of the king. How could you not have children learning about the Rebbeinu Shalom in his own palace?
100%.
And he felt that was very strongly, and so he would speak about that, come out every year. But it wasn't just Eretz Yisrael. He was involved, like you said, he was involved in the Chavis Yisrael, which
tuition
really,
assistance.
tuition
Yes.
assistance
They
to all
work
the
with
areas.
Chazaq till today.
And they worked in those days with us very much in the Queens community.
Queen, yeah.
And
What was it called? Children's Fund? What was it? The organization that you started?
Children's Torah Foundation.
Children's Torah Foundation, yes.
And very, we're educating hundreds. A lot of the leaders of the community now started out then.
Amazing.
And he was also a master mechanech. You
were telling me before about learning. About how he would open up the Gemara.
He opened up and he would go from, you see the Mishnah and what the Gemara had, why it had to add something to the Mishnah, and what Rashi had a diuk, and Tosfos, and if Tosfos had a kasha, if he had to terutzim, what's wrong with the first teretz, what the second teretz answers, that the first teretz he built up from there, and then maybe if someone had a kasha on Tosfos, or it was
he taught you how to learn.
I don't
know if you remember, he was once the speaker by the by the Siyam Hashas.
Oh.
So
right.
The Mechaber to say not to Siyam, but to start brachas.
He wouldn't say the Siyam because he said he didn't do Daf Yomi. He doesn't want to fool so many people that would think he does Daf Yomi and he's being Messiah. So he didn't want to be Messiah, so they Mechaber him to start.
I don't know, but it's so if you listen carefully, they have it on tape.
Right, it's beautiful. Beautiful.
He didn't read the Gemara. He taught you how to teach a Daf Gemara. Slowly, this question. He didn't stand talk.
I think it was
but this was a question. He was in the other, and that's But I said to him, this was a whole shir on how to say a shir. What you speak out, what you're not. This, he said, this is an issue. Talk about it, he didn't. But they put this is a kash from the issue. But not very little. Mostly how to say the shir. Explain the Gemara with the Rashi.
Amazing.
The shir and how to say
If you remember, they tried to. He was going a little bit longer than they would like, and they gave him a note. That's how those days. And he just pushed it to the side. And he did what
No. I don't think so. He didn't push it to the side. He said, maybe I'm too long. So, but the oil started to tell me, what do you mean? Let him talk. Let him talk. People was nothing.
I mentioned to you the story before that someone who I know, and a relative of my father-in-law's, and he would come to every event that I remember in Brooklyn, to the dinner, to the parlor meeting in the summer. And he would always show, and he would say hello to me, and that I should know he's there. And I mentioned it to his son years later, and his son said, well, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Pam. And when he came to Rabbi Pam Shir, he was a refugee. This was someone who was an older generation. He was a World War II refugee. He didn't have a chance to learn anything. He never learned Gemara before. He was put in the 9th grade, and those days Rabbi Pam gave the 9th grade Shir. And he said, don't worry. And he said, by the end of the year, Rabbi Pam took care of him. He caught up with all the other Talmidim. He just knew. And he credited him. And he knew, he saw. Rabbi Pam taught him that. And that's what. And he always felt that kesher to Rabbi Pam. And this was Rabbi Pam's moised. He used to come.
Amazing. The rabbi mentioned also before a big chiddush in a sense that Rav Pam's Talmidim that are very active today in Klal Yisrael. It's not like they were Talmidim later on. Rabbi Yossi is an exception, but they were primarily Talmidim in the high school.
It was most of his life. He was a high school Rebbe most of the time. 40 years for sure. Rebbe 60 years. Yeah.
In Torah.
High school Rebbe, like he says, 9th grade, 11th grade. My time he was 11th grade Rebbe. Yeah, whatever.
You had your father as a Rebbe?
I didn't have. My brothers had 2 brothers, and but but my 2 brothers went by him. Yeah, sure.
Interesting, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, listen, I, as one that is involved with the Klal, this is so inspiring to hear how much the Rav cared and cried and was involved and did for Klal Yisrael. Now, if there would be one final message, a takeaway that Klal Yisrael, the whole world is listening, if there would be one that they could take upon themselves, to follow the ways we're discussing the life and legacy of Rabbi
Moshe Sher used to say, you have to care about Klal Yisrael and care about Rebbe Yisrael. He took care of a lot of many individual people came to him for eitzes.
Like you said, people running out the door.
But some places really, he put himself out to them personally and really cared about them. Individual people, not the world. like care about Rebbe Yisrael.
Yeah, I might have given the impression we're talking about things that he did on a wide scale. But when he really taught his Talmidim, he was very midos. He was known as, when he said Abbas Yisrael, Lashon Hara, and things like that. He made sure that Talmidim had the right midos. He would teach midos. He would talk about midos. You didn't have that for a Rebbe who really, to that extent, tried to make the Talmidim a dimension, I think more so in those days it wasn't as usual for Talmid to have such a close kasher with the Rebbe. Now it's a little bit more common. In those days he had a tremendous kasher, a lifelong kasher with many of his Talmidim, even if they moved away.
Interesting, most of the Yitzhak didn't live near the yeshiva. And far away.
Canarsie, you said, no?
He lived in East New York originally.
He's a young.
I was actually was a Rebbe 30 years. He was a Rebbe 40 years a Rebbe.
No, he was a Rebbe in Flatbush. I was in Torah Talks when it was in Williamsburg.
Oh wow!
And he lived in.
I was in
Williamsburg. No, and he didn't. He lived in East New York. It took 2 trains to get there.
Wow.
And it's not like and so that's when they were close to him somehow.
I heard an interesting story from Rabbi Steinberg from our neighborhood. He said he remembers that on Fridays, when it was a long Friday in the summers. So, the boys would stick around yeshiva sometimes and play ball in the yard afterwards. And he said he would notice that he would leave with Rav Shuskal.
Yeah.
Rav Shuskal would walk across the Williamsburg Bridge to the Lower East Side. It was the son-in-law of Rav
He took the train, and my father took the train
the other way. Yeah. No, but he would sometimes walk across the bridge. He didn't take the train, he would walk across the bridge. So that he would walk, Rav Shuskal, and they were talking and learning to where he would, but then Rav Shuskal said, no, I'll walk you to the train. So he would walk him, but then he would walk him back, and sometimes they would go back and forth 2-3 times because they were talking and learning.
Unbelievable. The life and legacy of Rabbi Avraham Pam, I could add Vaigdal Moshe and Moshe in the Torah. You grew up. What is connected to by Yarbis Filatami? Went out and saw the tribulation and difficulties of Am Yisrael. We see that with your father Zatzal, and you cared for Am Yisrael, for Rebbe Yisrael, for every single individual. And that's one thing that every single one of us, everybody could do something. Nobody could do everything. That's my line I always like to say. Everybody could do something. Everybody could get involved to help others, to be there for others. Thinking of ways to make Klal Yisrael.
Once heard a word from somebody, very pithy word, but it moved me a lot. The Torah says, "Le'samar adam reyacha," but the Torah doesn't say what to do. The Torah says one thing: don't do nothing.
Do something.
Sometimes the person comes to me and needs $50,000. I don't happen to have that $50,000, but I have $20. I have $100. I could call a friend, So. Don't do nothing.
Don't stand still. Go ahead and do something. That's a beautiful chiddush, and that's definitely personifies what we've been talking about up until now. And I want to thank Rabbi Yossi for everything they do for Klal Yisrael and for coming and being part of the Torah Talks podcast. And Rabbi Aaron Shlita Yeshikach Gadol, thank you very much for coming. I know it wasn't easy, but it means a lot to us on behalf of Chazaq, and we want to thank all of you for joining us Tuesday nights, Chazaq Torah Talks at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, chazaq.org/live, plus all the different platforms on podcasts. Shout out to Torah Time for hosting it as well. Dailygiving.org, a dollar a day goes very far away. I want to thank them as well. And the entire Chazaq team, really appreciate all the work done over here. Future events, please reach out to Chazaq, chazaq.org. And once again, thank you very, very much.
No pleasure.
Shukach Gadol. Wow, very inspiring. On a personal level, I do this for myself. I get inspired. I hear Torah.